So the other night, you said trust and faith are synonymous, right? Do you remember that? And when you said it, I thought, not to me. Because remember when I talked about how I met you first, and just the kind of total attention that you gave to me, and we just were completely eye to eye, deeply connected, and I had heard one talk that I had asked them to send me, so I wanted to know who it is that I was going to help promote on the radio station. And that's when I ran over to where you were staying and had that encounter with you. And I grew up not trusting anything. Absolutely nothing. The only... What?
What's changed?
Oh. Okay. He's been doing this for 50 years now. No, I trust you too.
To do that.
Yeah. So I grew up without any relationship with trust whatsoever. Actually, the first thing that I can remember trusting was Allen Ginsberg. For some reason, Allen's talked about how great marijuana was. It was, I totally trusted it. That was my first trust. And really until that moment. So that trust is, faith starts to go for me into an area of this spiritual mystery. Trust has a more down-to-earth human quality, and it sort of launches into a place where you can then eventually approach faith. Because when and my own little story, I met you at Ganesh Puri. Actually, we met up, they were on a tour with Swami Muktananda, some of you know who he is. And we met up at Swami Muktananda's ashram, and it was there that Ramdas said, I know where Maharaji is, so I will send you up to Nainital to be able to have darshan. And I said, well, that was great. I said, you know what, but one thing while we're here, everybody's bowing down, and I had just come to India, well, maybe a number of months before that, in front of Swami Muktananda, which is the tradition, but I just felt completely off. I didn't have, I was completely in my mind about it. So I said, what do you think it is? And you said, it's your soul honoring the soul of the great soul of this other being. And if you have any mental stuff about it, it's good. Work with it. Grist for the mill, although you hadn't written that yet. And I went back the next day as I was going to leave to go see Maharaji in Kenchi, and same thing happened. I just couldn't connect with it at all. And then I finally did get up to Kenchi within a couple of days, and then I was sitting in front of Maharaji's door, in front of the tucket with him, and Ramdas wasn't there, and Ramesh. And he came out, and I didn't have a thought whatsoever. I just fell down. I couldn't do anything but that. That, to me, was the deepest part of trust then becoming faith, because there was no mental thing whatsoever. So talk about trust and faith a little bit. Actually, both of you.
I'll just say a couple of things. That Jewish guy who started Christianity. No, not Rabbi Jesus. That Saul guy. He said, by grace was I saved through faith. is a very interesting thing, because then we have to talk about grace, but that's a whole other universe. But the way I think about it is faith, real faith, comes from an immediate connection or transmission with something real, someone real, or the soul of a great being. The trust is what we have to do to clean up our act, to really immerse ourselves in that faith, which we have, which has been lit up. And then the trust, in order to trust that, it means we have to work with our mind and our stuff, to keep letting go, to keep recognizing what's real and what's our nonsense. So it's kind of like two things like that. That's what it seems like to me. Because it's the same thing when I walked into the room with Ram Dass the first time in 1968 or 69, without a word being spoken, even without eye contact. Immediately, I knew that whatever it was I was looking for was real. That's faith. You know it. It's not blind faith because you know it. You feel it. So, and it's been 50 years of bullshit since then, but that faith is exactly the same, though. That place is the place you always go back to once that's lit up. But I don't think we light that up ourselves with our personal will or even with our own longing. I think that's the grace of a great being, a grace of God, and the situation of our karmas being ripe at that moment. Something happens. And then that's it. It's just a question of time. The tree is cut.
This is a story for you, after your story. I was in India the first time, and I was standing next to Maharaji, and there was the man touching Maharaji's feet, and I just yearned for that. And I just sidled up to the man so he got it finished and I can get in to get his feet. And so I reached for his feet, and he immediately took his feet into the blanket. I touched his feet. He pulled in because I was massaging his feet. I couldn't just touch his feet. I had to do something. And he was pulling back from my doing.
Did that affect your faith in the moment? What happened to you inside as a result of him pulling back? I've had that happen too. Probably put me into a spin for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, I've done, yeah. Yes.
And isn't that part of what he is actually doing in terms of having us understand and cultivate that kind of commitment?
He gave me hard lessons. Hard lessons.
Hard lessons, yeah.
Trust, I think, is a psychological word. And you were right. And then faith. Yeah.
it cannot be described. Whereas trust, there is ways in which you can describe. But go ahead, you were going to say something about that. Oh, come on.
I don't remember. I really don't. Just one funny thing. Maharaji once asked one of the other Westerners, Balaram Das, "Why do you touch my feet?" No. Yeah, and Balaram said, "It may be the lowest place on your body, but it's higher than we'll ever get." Maharaji, we never. Siddhi Ma said a long time ago once, she said that Maharaji tested the Westerners very fiercely. And I didn't even know what she was talking about, but really, what would happen is we'd be with him for a period of time in some place, and you just get totally locked in. And then you come to the temple one day, and he's gone. He's gone. Nobody will tell you where he went. Nobody will tell you when he's coming back, if he's coming back. And you're just like, you don't know what to do, So at that point, some people would just disappear. They'd just go off on some other trip, and they'd never show up again. But there was a group of people who just refused to give up, and we would send telegrams to all the devotees we knew. We would beg people to tell us where to go, how to do, we would do anything to find him. And then we would find him. He would let us find him a lot of the times. And in retrospect, it was not a test, but it was a way of kind of strengthening the commitment to really be in that place with him. And people who had other things to do just disappeared. It was very interesting. And sometimes, at one point in Vrindavan, the visa people were giving Maharaji a hard time, and trying to get bribes and stuff to let the Westerners stay. So he banned us from the temple. He wouldn't let us come in the temple, but we could still come to the front part of the temple where the Hanuman Murti was, and from there we could see him in the courtyard. So we'd be standing over there staring at him, right? And he would look at us like this, then he would turn his back. It was so insane. It was crazy. It was crazy. We would go nuts, We're just standing there staring at him. So then the next day we got to the temple, and he had somebody build the wall up higher. But we could still see him. And so, this is so intense. It was my last day in India. He was sending me home, and I had to leave that day to catch the plane in Delhi. And we were just staring at him over the wall, and he would look at us like this, and then he'd turn. And finally, one of the women started to sing, I think, the arti that we sang to him, Jai Jagadish Hare. And all of a sudden he was like, "Come on!" And we all ran to him, and I had a great darshan. It was my last time to be with him physically, so far.
Right.
But he was always playing with that place, in a sweet way, not in a manipulative or... it had no edge. It was all play, and you knew it, even though you couldn't stand it. It was play.
Mm. So that place where he pulled back his feet for you, that's an analogy for all of us on a day-to-day basis. One thing or another would happen like that. He was relentless on a day-to-day basis. But in my own case, I was very hard on myself, and whatever trust I had in that, as you say, even psychological trust, I had a hard time keeping that intact. And I think, we should talk about what we need to feed ourselves when anything like that happens in life. I mean, this was an extreme example of being with Maharaji and having him pulling his feet out. It was like pulling. You'd think, okay, I'm not lovable. So maybe talk about developing some compassion for yourself in that situation. And how did you in that moment or in the moments after it? What did you do?
I cried.
You cried.
I cried.
And then?
I stopped crying. Compassion for oneself. That's the mind. That's the mind. That's the mind. And thought is just thought. I'm no good. That's a thought. Then those thoughts, just thoughts, just the manufacturing of thought. Sometimes thoughts are useful in the path. And sometimes they're not useful. And then there's thoughts that I'm a no good, a no goodnik. When those thoughts come up here, you bring them down to the heart. See, I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not. They've got a different method for this. This down to their heart, and you say down to this travel. You say, I am loving awareness. 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 And you get to the spiritual heart. You don't, spiritual heart. And you find a doorway to the next plane, the next plane of consciousness. Which is soul land. And then you slit the veil, you go across to the plane of consciousness in which you're a soul. And then if you, in your soul, is the witness, and the witness witnesses your thought. It's like you're going to stand, you're not thinking that anymore. You're witnessing your thought. And then you're witnessing your thought, and you're witnessing that thought. That unpleasant thought. And you love it. Do you hear? You love it. I used to say, I love it to death. But I felt that was too violent for my heart. That is, come down to the soul. Your soul is witnessing and now you're in the soul, which loves everything.
I have to defend Buddhism right now and basically refer to Jack.
What?
I want to refer to the thing where you said this isn't particularly the Buddhist method in terms of when we have negative thoughts and judgments about ourselves and in relation to what we felt. You're no good, Nick, because he pulled his feet away or he didn't give you a piece of fruit, all those things that happen. I like what, I think that Jack has represented this in different talks, that it's absolutely the same except for maybe the word soul. That may be the only. But where he says, we're just human, right, Jack? We're just human and it's okay. And we can love ourselves completely, including these negative thoughts.
Including
Yeah. And have compassion in that way, compassion for ourselves. So
Yeah.
I do think that there's a real sameness, except for we call it soul in the bhakti tradition, and I think even, Jack, you'd even say soul once in a while, in a bigger context, a Buddha mind, true nature. It's just different words, but I do believe that would be the case.
I'm a bhakti yogi, which love. It's all love. Just all love. And you love your negativity. And that's, if you say, I'm going to get rid of it, that's going to make it stay. But you love it, it's going to be closer.
By love, do you mean accept it? Accepting, accept it.
Yeah, accept it.
You have actually in this, I know that you spend time with Buddhist teachers, and you have, in my mind, in different response to people's questions or in talks or whatever, managed to blend some of the teachings, especially of Dzogchen perhaps, into, you tell me if I'm wrong.
I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't tell you.
You wouldn't.
No.
But maybe you can talk about the way that, what we're in direct reference to now, about how to handle the mistrust that we create by rejecting negative emotions and so on in relation to the bhakti path and the Buddhist path.
Wow. Um, well, there's a concept in Buddhism, of natural mind, which is, this is our natural state, is very hard to talk about this, especially when you don't know what you're talking about.
I know. And the Buddhists there.
Yeah, I'm scared. They're sitting over there with guns. Well, I'll just come right out and say it, you know. Neem Karoli Baba is the natural state. That's who he is. He is Buddha nature. He is, the only thing in there is, you could say God if you wanna, or you can say he's absolutely, completely surrendered to that oneness, merged into that oneness. And for me, I really love all the Buddhist teachings so much because they're just talking about him. They may not think so, but that's their problem. And in fact, when I do speak to the teachers directly, and I tell them about Maharaji, they go, "Yeah, right. He's a siddha. He's enlightened." That kind of stuff. So an enlightened being isn't a person like us, although they may look like that from the outside. In the inside, they're completely at ease in the natural state, in the true being, in openness, in unconditional love and compassion. All these things arise naturally from an enlightened being. And so that's where, for me, and I told you yesterday in the workshop, you know, Maharaji was looking through my notebook once, and he came across this thing, and he had gone through the Sufi stuff, and it passed off. He said, "What's that?" And I looked at it, and I said, "It's a Buddhist prayer." And I thought I was going to get like, "What? Why do you have that?" And he said, "Translate some." So the Indian guy there translated some of this prayer, and he goes, "Teek, right, very good, correct." Really? Wow. Then he keeps going through the book, and he comes across a little picture of himself. And he says, "Who's this?" I said, "Maharaji, it's you." "Nahi, Buddha." So that, you know, what after that? What are you going to do? It's all the same. You know, that's, so for me, but once again, it's easy for me to think that I trust his natural state, but I can't feel my natural state. You know, so that's where the psychological part of it comes. You know, in my heart, there's absolute faith and trust of that place as he showed it to us, even within us. But when I'm left to my own, you know, and I fall into the psychological stuff and the emotional stuff, then it's very hard to see it or have the faith. The faith is there, but the trust in myself is not there. So gradually through practices, you get more confidence in yourself because you're getting rooted more deeply in that place in you. So when you get washed away by some stuff, even in the middle of it, you might be able, there's a little space in there where, you know, this will pass. And that's trust, because you trust what's within you, that all these things are happening, they're coming and going, and you'll still be here. Because sometimes when we get in these really dark places, we have no vote. We can't, with our emotions and our thoughts, we can't get out of it. But from practice, there's a natural kind of space that these things go through. We're sitting in that space, and there's a part of us that knows this is just another one, you know. So
Every time you say, trust yourself, you leave yourself with that, that's not good.
Meaning?
Love it. Love it. Love your natural state. And then you can, you have, I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. I'm aware of what? I am aware of that thought. I am aware of this tent. I am aware of all of us. I'm aware. I'm aware. I'm loving. I'm loving this moment. This moment. This moment. A moment is not an hour or a minute. A moment is not in time. A moment is infinite. You dive into the moment. This moment. Just this moment. This moment. Train your mind no past, no future. Those are thoughts I'm either hoping, thinking about the past. No, just the moment. And life is chock full of moments. Life is chock full of moments. Moments are eternity. And you delve into the moment. And that's the practice that leads you to the moment of death, being conscious in this moment of death. Being conscious in this moment. In this moment. Watch your mind. Witness your mind. Go ahead.
What? Well, there's one, as you were talking about just, and you've talked much about it over many decades, about primarily be here now, be in the moment, and get out of past, future, and so on.
Never made any sense to me.
I think one thing we're not talking about, and you have mentioned, surrender into the moment. And last year or a couple of years ago, we had our Ram Dass's Indian brother, K.K. Shah, and our mentor, talking about what's called in India Sharanagat, which is true surrender. And I think that needs to be brought into this conversation around trust and faith. And how do we connect with the true surrender inside ourselves to be able to really inhabit the moment, timeless moment? And how do we engender that faith? Is there a way to cultivate? For me, it's cultivate initially trust, even though it is a psychological thing. It's a starting point. What do you think about cultivating faith in relation to surrender, being able to surrender truly?
Well, I don't think we do it. I think we're walking down the street and we walk into it somehow. We have an experience somehow in our life that shows us there's more than the way we've been living, something deeper, something fuller. I've said this before, but I really think this kind of thing is more like a disease, and that you catch it from the people who have it, or you catch it one way or another. It's not something, I see it as a ripening of our own karmas. For instance, we're all in this room. We all came here looking for something, or trying to find some experience, or trying to connect more deeply, or whatever story we told ourselves to get us here. That's the result of our own previous karmas, our own life experiences, driving us to find something deeper.
Well, they came here because of Maharaji.
Yes, of course, but that's also a thought. It might be true,
Maharaji
but
is
it's
a thought?
When you say it, it's a thought, yeah. What you can't say is not a thought, and that's who he is. Yeah, how would you feel if I sat here? You know, forget it, you didn't come here of your own will. Maharaji brought you here. You go like this, you know. How dare you tell me what I'm, you know. What's true is true. It's another level. That's the level that encompasses our whole lives. And one must have the experience of that. I'm from New York. I got, as far as my thinking goes, it's screwed. I can't think myself out of anything. I can't go, I'm loving awareness. It doesn't work for me. I sit down, I do Ram Ram. That works for me because it bypasses all of my Long Island conditioning. That's the only thing I can do. So when you say it's all Maharaji, of course it's all Maharaji. There's no doubt in my mind that it's all Maharaji, but I don't think it's saying that over and over again doesn't make it any more or less true. However, you can use that as a method. It is a method of you keep surrendering whatever storyline you have, and you say, this is all of this is his, he's arranging all of this, he's running the show, he's pulling all the strings, because that's the way I see it. You know, I remember I came back from India once, and I walked into someone's apartment in New York, and they were showing the videos of Maharaji. There's about a total of maybe 8 or 9 minutes. And I looked at the screen and I just laughed. And I said, that's not Maharaji. That's the Maharaji puppet that the real Maharaji created for us because we have puppet eyes. So we can only see puppets. But the real Maharaji is pulling the strings on all the puppets. But how do you say that? I don't think it's fair to try to, I think it's manipulative in some way to hit people with that over and over again. He's doing everything, he's doing everything. I happen to believe that. I really do. Yeah, I admit it, you know. I admit it, I believe it. But I don't want to make you, I don't force you to believe that. You have to have that experience yourselves. And if repeating I am loving awareness gradually brings you into awareness and not stuck in thinking that you are loving awareness, that's good. Do you get the subtlety of that? So that's all I'm saying. I'm cranky. I'm from New York. I don't want to be, I can't convince myself of anything.
We're going to get Crody shirts, by the way. Crody,
Yeah,
grumpy.
grumpy.
Yeah.
I'm one of the 7 dwarfs.
Maharaji is a fisherman. He's a fisherman, and he's behind me. He's fishing with a pole, and you're the fish. And he's fishing for egos to become souls. And I'm the lure, or I am
Worm.
the worm.
What is he?
A worm.
Stamp of approval. I'm a worm too.
You know, the foundation is working on a film, a documentary about K.C. Tiwari. Many of you know of him through Krishna Das, most especially, who talks about, last night told a wonderful story about him. He was one of our mentors, along with K.K. Shah, Dada Mukherjee, Siddhima, beyond all of that, in her own category. But we were reviewing some of it together the other day, and there's this one part where he talks about how we all sat with Maharaji, and the big joke was we did the 5-limb yoga, the Westerners, right? Sleeping, eating, smoking, walking around aimlessly, and gossiping, right? Something like that.
That's what Maharaji said we were qualified for.
That's all we could do. We were useless. And Tiwari was in agreement. He said, all of that went on. Life went on. And then we sat around him, and all that was everything was happening in spite of this nature that we had of just being distracted by this stuff all the time. Love was permeated throughout. And he said, and then you looked at this bulky man in a blanket, and you thought that's what it was? Remember he said that in there? It was, I can't explain it. I have no words. That's not what it is. It is something beyond. And this, Krishnadas was just mentioning, we're all gathered together here, and Ramdas, in that vibration continues no different than when we were sitting with Maharaji, although at the time we were very lost in that emanation of that particular body. And
I would say we were very found in that emanation.
yes, very true. And so this is what Tiwari said in that moment. I was just realizing that very much is no different. He said he's totally free, no rules, he was against any kind of cult, he said. No rules, and and how we are here in that same way. I think we have a few minutes left. Would anybody like to ask a question or two? Mike, maybe you can give it over, or Jonathan? Question to anybody on anything?
So thank you so much for your teachings. And I was really taken, Ram Dass, and I want to make sure that I understood what you said yesterday about death. You talked about you don't have the trust, or you said something about how you hoped that Maharaji would not yet take you. And I was wondering if
It was Maharaji what?
would not yet take you, that you weren't ready. Am I reading that? Did I understand? You were not yet ready to go. Is that accurate? Did you say that? And what would it take to be able to trust to be ready?
Maharaji is was on a boat with KK. You get it?
Yeah.
Go ahead, you can say it.
Oh, the story. KK was on a boat in the Ganga Yamuna Saraswati, the confluence of them near Allahabad, where they have huge melas, and they went out, and Maharaji said to KK, jump into the river. And KK, who couldn't swim, was like, he was shaking. I can't do that, Maharaji. And Maharaji pointed at this bridge that was way in the distance and way high above the rivers, and said, you could jump from that bridge, and if that wasn't your moment to transition, nothing would happen. And KK then decided, okay, I'm here with Maharaji. How could I not have the faith? And he jumped into the water, which came up to his knees. So that's the answer to that question?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I want to say, I don't really think it's that easy to be ready to go. You know, Mr. Tiwari was a really great yogi, and he had had extraordinary experiences, really deep samadhis, and so one time Maharaji looks at him and said, hey, you want to see God? Yes. He said, okay. This is Maharaji. He said, okay, you go to Nainital, you tie a big rock around your feet and jump in the water. You'll see God. He didn't do it.
Question? Somebody. You're not ready to jump, oh. Okay.
So what I'm hearing, I've heard something very consistent from your teachings and from the Buddhist teachings this morning about the disidentification of thoughts. What I'm feeling like the difference is that there's a great ocean of love that the Maharaji helps to bridge in or flows in. And out of the Buddhist approach in the disidentification of thoughts, there's a natural state of being, but not necessarily this flow of love that we speak about the Maharaji. So I'm trying to...
I don't think that's accurate, really.
Okay, thank you.
Because when you do, the point is, the methods that you do might appear different, but the results will be very much the same. Would you say, Jack? Or no? Yeah. In other words, Buddha was nothing but love and compassion. But he spoke about things in a way, and he taught in a way that would help those people who were there at the time, firstly, to free themselves from suffering. He spoke about things in his way. He didn't speak about things that wouldn't be ultimately the most helpful. The Hindus talk about everything, you know, they don't care. It's like, oh, I love this, all that. But when you come to it comes to the same place, because in there is the same thing in everybody. There's not two things. There's just what's in there, our real nature. And we all have the same qualities in that nature. Kindness, compassion, caring, and freedom from suffering, essentially, of any kind. And it feels, if you could say it's not this, not this, you could also say it's this, this, this. It's just a way of describing it, an angle of looking at it, language. Yeah.
So,
I think that's the way I feel about it.
so that when you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him.
Well, if you give him some tea first. I mean, you know, say hi. Hi, Buddha. It's nice to meet you. I have to kill you, I guess. They say so. He'll say, what are you talking about? He said, that's your teaching. He said, I never said that.
The real, the reality of Jack Kornfield, Sharon Salzberg, and Joseph Goldstein, who we met back in the day when we were with Maharaji and subsequent, and the way that our hearts are blended, and why these retreats always have, and Roshi Joan Halifax should mention, and of course Trudy, that is essential to the expression that we like to share at these retreats, and could only happen because of these hearts that are no different in ultimately, absolutely no different. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm interested to know what your, hello, better? Yeah. I'm interested to know what, whoever feels to share, what are your practices? What is your sadhana now? Only if you feel to share. I realize it's a personal question.
You know, Duncan Trussell, I don't know if he's here, but he asked that same thing to Sharon Salzberg one day here. And you know what she said? I sit down and I get real. That's my practice. I think we're going to do a little bit more discussion about that with Jack on Sunday, actually. But go ahead, you can share your practice. Sufi dancing, I think.
I did Sufi dancing on the roofs of the houses in the mission with Sufi Sam back in 68, 69. I did it. I almost fell off the roof. What you see is what you get. I sing, I sit, I watch TV. I sing, I sit, I watch TV. I eat, I sing, I sit, I watch TV. And I live, you know. I really feel that you do these practices and you just live your life the best you can, and the practices change you from within. They change you from within. And Mike is waving his hands. That's good. Hi, Mike. How you doing? Good. You just keep doing. You keep relinquishing the attachment and the identification with the show, with your thoughts and your stories, and you keep aiming at that love. And little by little, your life changes around you, and you get the strength to become a kind, caring, compassionate, truthful human being. So.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
One of my sadhana is surrender. Just surrender. Surrender to whatever. And that takes faith.
As we were talking.
Yeah?
That's what we were talking just before, yeah.
Yeah.
Surrender and faith. Yeah.
Surrender.
You know, he was talking about I am loving awareness mantra is not something that works for him. What works for him is the repetition of the name, Ram Ram. How about, so it made me think, Ram Ram, I am loving awareness. Ram Ram, I am loving awareness.
Ram Ram, I'm loving awareness.
Ram Ram, I am loving awareness. Ram Ram, I am loving awareness. Ram Ram, I am loving awareness. Ram Ram, I am loving awareness.
Ram, Ram,
I am
loving awareness.
Ram,
Ram, Ram,
I
loving
am
awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness.
Ram, Ram,
Loving awareness.
Ram, Ram,
Loving awareness.
Ram, Ram,
Loving awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness. Ram, Ram, loving awareness.
That works.
It works.
Okay.
It works. Works for me.
Okay, time for lunch. Thank you, everybody.
Ram, Ram, you are hungry.
Ram, Ram, loving away.